You have reached the latest episode of The Ugly Truth. Today, we are revisiting our segment, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, First Dates Edition. All of this, plus a lost dog named Chocolate. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy the show.
It's another uncensored look at the world around you, from sisters who will say just about anything to anyone at any time. It's the Uggs. Jamie?
Not all heroes wear capes. Sometimes they wear nightgowns.
Paula?
I'm on to you, motherfucker. I know what you're after.
Uncensored as always, it's time for the Ugly Truth.
I'm like inundated with animals right now.
You really are. It's a zoo over there.
I can't believe I just said that. Okay, go ahead.
Welcome to the Ugly Truth. Welcome. It is episode 481.
No, hardly. I'm surprised I didn't go, something stupid.
Okay.
God.
So, really quick before we get into Paula's world, which we're going to very quickly, I just wanted to discuss something incredibly serious to you and I don't know why society chooses to pull on this thread, but it makes me uncomfortable, and I'm supposed to be okay with it, but I'm not. And that is this Grease prequel they're talking about doing. I am so disappointed. See, here's the thing. I'm like, I guess I'm okay with it, but I'm not, because it's not Olivia Newton-John and John Travolta, first of all. And second, it's like, it's never going to be as good as the OG. And they're going to make it all fucking High School Musical-y. They're going to use these 25-year-olds that look like 18-year-olds, and it's going to be dumb. I just know it.
The thing about it, though, is, well, I mean, it's obviously not going to make the same near as close impact as, you know, the original, or even Grease 2 for that matter.
Right.
I mean, actually, Grease 2 and Grease 1 weren't even linked, but
No.
The whole thing about this prequel idea is they're going to try and like set the premise for Grease. Like,
Right.
Was she dead? Did she drown? Or was it real? You know,
oh my
like,
God, I forgot about that.
they get to predetermine like how it all happened. And you know what's going to happen is it's going to show their whole summer. It's going to show everything. And either at the end, they're going to show, did she drown? Was she dead? Or was it real? Or maybe they'll just leave it to your imagination. I don't know what they're going to do. But that's just the whole thing is like they have that power now in their hands. And that's the part that really pisses me off, because I'm like, if Grease wanted you to know, they would have told you.
That's true.
You don't get to take that from them.
That's true. It does kind of break that rule of imagination and determining what exactly are we watching.
It's like someone trying to go in front of Harry Potter and like, you know, telling a story. It's like, no, you don't get to start before Harry Potter. Like, you know, back when the parents were infants, you know, and then like decide like, well, what their life would have been, what were they predisposed? You know, maybe her and Snape were supposed to get married, and then they would have had, you know, who knows what. Maybe Tom Riddle would have been their son, or I don't know. But I'm just saying,
it could potentially ruin the coolness of the original and all.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's just like you don't get to pre-tell the story. It just.
I just don't see this being the vehicle in which it needs a prequel. I understand that what they basically want to do is make this a summer love rom-com type film, but the problem is that Grease, the original, is actually a lot deeper than that. It's not just a superficial high school film. It has a lot of deep underlying discussions about it, and we're hardcore fans, and so we know all of these things, and so it's like
I think whoever's doing this, I think there is some sinister intentions here. I'm not joking. I think that they're just like, oh yeah, it's gonna be totally like High School Musical, Lemonade Mouth, like, you know, my Olivia will love it. But I'm just like, I'm on to you, motherfucker. I know what you're after. You're gonna try and steal the crown jewel, what everybody has wanted, and you don't get to do that. It's like one of those things, like when they tried to, I don't know, like when they try and remake Footloose, or if someone ever tried to come out and remake Top Gun, like the real one.
right.
You can't mess with perfection.
Well, you can't, especially when they are time capsules of a time. Like, they're a perfect time capsule of when those things were filmed. You can't update that shit. It doesn't work. You know, if you were going to do a prequel, it should have happened. Well, first of all, there shouldn't be one. But if there had been one, it would have had to have been in the 70s. You know what I mean? But even then, the problem with the prequel with Grease specifically is it messes with this kind of like, was Abbey Road to show that Paul McCartney was dead? When you play the records backwards, does it say Paul is dead? Is he dead? I mean, you're going to try to erase that mystery or that mystic, thing that came with those albums. It's the same thing with this movie. You can't mess with it. Yes, it's a fun musical, but it's more than that. It's more than that to people who are really into it and understand what it really is supposed to be. So I don't know. I'm disappointed. I'll be honest. I'm disappointed. And I'm like, I guess I can be okay with it. But now I'm just like, no, I regret even saying that.
I didn't see the Footloose that had Juliana Hoof, and I didn't see the, I don't know. There's been a lot of people who've tried to do different remakes.
Oh, Dirty Dancing, Havana Nights.
Who the fuck did that?
Remember
that? No.
It was in the 90s. They did a Dirty Dancing Havana Nights.
Whenever I hear things like that, I intentionally just like block it out of my life.
For sure.
I'm just like it's dead to me. It doesn't even exist. So
unacceptable.
But you know what I was going to say though is I don't know if you've seen the movie Ford versus Ferrari.
Yes.
Okay. Whoever like that filming, whatever like tape that was on, or like I guess it's not tape, but that filming style, like it looked old.
Yeah.
But it was still like very sharp.
Yes.
Like if you're gonna do an old time movie, do it like that.
Do it on
that looks really cool.
Yes. It's a good film. Interesting, our dad loved Ken Miles. Who
did he really?
Oh yeah. Now, first of all, Ken Miles died when Dad was very young. We were nowhere in near existence yet.
Oh no, yeah.
But does it surprise you at all that he liked Ken Miles? It doesn't surprise me. He's a lot like him. Like really?
Yeah.
He's a lot like him.
He's a rebel. Yeah, he was
a renegade. He was a rebel.
You know what? Dad was always doing these wild modifications to his car.
Yeah.
That I don't even think they could say it was illegal because they didn't even know what they were.
Yeah. In fact, in the scene where the brakes are shot at the Le Mans and he pulls over and goes, brakes are shot, and they come out and the Italians are saying that's against the rules. It's against the rules. They're like, show me your rule book.
Like, show me your stupid rule book.
Yeah. No, there is no rule. That was our dad, the way he raced, the way he handled himself. It was the same thing. And the deal is this. I cannot watch the end of that movie because I know how they did him dirty, and they did him dirty over and over again. They were the worst to Ken Miles, just the worst. And Daryl's like, at some point, it was during the Le Mans, I said, I can't watch this anymore. And he said, why not? I go, because I know how it ends, and it really upsets me because they didn't like him because he wasn't likable. And that pisses me off because he was the best. And they didn't like him.
Well, he was a renegade. Yeah. Well,
and it makes me mad.
Well, see, the thing is I didn't know the story. And so when I watched it, I liked it because I thought it was going to be about like cars and stuff. I mean, it was about racing, obviously.
Yeah.
I didn't even know a race like that existed. I'm like,
Le Mans? Oh, yeah.
So I liked it. But then when all that happened, I'm like, that fucking asshole.
Oh,
I'm like,
God,
that little
worst.
And I forgot who the guy is. He's actually played in other movies and he's kind of cute. But
he was in Sweet Home Alabama. He was the husband.
That's Josh Lucas?
Yeah.
Oh my God, he's gained weight. But maybe he gained weight for the part.
Maybe.
But then at the end, like when they saw the plume of smoke, I'm like, well, he didn't crash. I'm like, he just hit a dirt pile or something. I'm like,
right.
Yeah. And then they all started sprinting across that field, and I'm just like, no. I'm like, he just hit a dirt pile, and I'm like, but they didn't have cages, and I don't even know if they had seatbelts, and so I'm like,
they did.
Well,
barely.
I'm like, what's that Formula One car that they were really struggling with? And I'm like, in fact, Victor's all remember. He said the brakes were kind of touchy or problematic, and he's like, he's been saying that the whole movie. I'm like.
Yeah.
I was just like,
why'd
you say that?
It's true.
I just couldn't believe it.
It was
but the wife was so strong.
Yeah, well,
like when Shelby went up to, because he was going to go say hi to them, and then the little boy's like, Mr. Shelby, and he turned around, and Matt Damon is such a good actor. I don't know why he's like underrated, but he's fantastic.
Well, first of all, Daryl that's his man crush. Daryl would go gay for Jason Bourne in a minute.
That's what I was going to say. He had the Bourne ultimatum thing.
Oh, my God. And so I'll come down like, what are you doing? He's like, nothing. I go, what are you watching? He goes, Jason Bourne. I'm like, okay, again. But anyway, yeah, it's a good movie. And you're right. I mean, that would be a cool way to do. If they were going to try to attempt it, definitely filming it to look old school would be really cool. I don't know if they'll do it. We'll see. But we're disappointed in it for sure. Okay. Yeah. Paula's World today. We're going to talk about Paula's World. You had an exciting adventure last week. You rescued a stray mutt.
Okay, so I went to go pick Ryan. He's been going to friends' houses lately. That's his thing. You know, he's a teenage boy. And so they go to each other's houses. Actually, remarkably, he told me the other day, he's like, Mom, can I invite so-and-so over? I'm like, yes. I'm like, we have drinks. We have snacks. I can, you guys can bring the Xbox in the living room. I'll go in the bedroom and, invite as many people over as you want.
Yeah,
because
really.
I always wanted to be that house.
Oh, everybody does. Yeah.
But he never wants to bring anybody over here. And I'm just like, I know it's because you're embarrassed of me.
No, it's not. It's because of his little sister. She's a pain.
She's always in her room playing on her tablet. So anyways, he went over there and then I picked him up around 7, I think. So he said goodbye to his friends and they were chit-chatting or something and they got in the car. So I was going to drive up to the next street, which was, maybe, 200 feet or something, and then make a U-turn because the street's kind of narrow and a lot of people park on the sides. And so as I was going up there, I saw like a skinny furry insect running up the street and I'm like, what on earth is that thing? And it was kind of a sundown. And then I pulled over and I started to get out and then there was a car across the street from me, like a red SUV. And there was a woman getting out and she's like, is that your dog? And I'm like, no, it's not mine. And she's like, she's like, I've been trying to catch it. And I'm like, oh. And so I squatted down. I'm like, hi, sweetheart. The dog ran straight up to me and jumped in my lap. And
Oh
I'm
my
like,
God. That would have freaked me out.
I just picked it up and held it like I hold Paula because it was a little tiny chihuahua, tiny though. I think the thing weighed like 4 pounds.
Poor thing.
It had this skinny little neck and it's kind of had like a longish nose. I want to say it was a mix of a chihuahua and like a Dachshund or
okay. Mm-hmm.
And it was like pure chocolate brown. It looked like a little Tootsie Roll. And so
our aunt had a dog named Chico that was a brown chihuahua.
I thought that was Grandma had Gypsy. That's right.
Grandma had the black chihuahua named Gypsy that hated us and tried to bite us all the time.
Because it was fat and stuck in that that smoke trailer.
No, she would let her out. She would roam around. She would actually roam around the entire mobile home park. And she owned the place. And then we'd come over.
Oh yeah, that's a nice existence.
We would come over and when we were there, she would hide under her table because we were so wild. And we're like, hi, Gypsy. And she's like, she did the same bark every time. And I'm like, what is this dog?
She does that dog thing where like their teeth go back and then their tongue and teeth are like out. They're like,
yes. And then of course Grandma's like, Gypsy. And Mom's like, Jamie Lynn, leave that poor animal alone.
Well, what the hell are we supposed to do? Sit there and look at Catholic magazines or, light Grandma's cigarettes more or get a Pepsi and go sit out on the, AstroTurf on the stairs.
Go touch her cactus.
I don't want to eat any more pizza. So, what is there left to do?
It's like, here, go get a grape soda.
You said we can walk up 4, trailers, but we can't go beyond the one with the white fence because a creep is up there. So, we're plumb out of ideas.
Well, not only that, but I remember she's like, go to the laundry room. So we go in the laundry room.
What the hell are we going to do there?
There was a really, really old, 1960s soda machine that dispensed glass bottle sodas. And it was grape, Sunkissed, Coca-Cola, and Mountain Dew in glass bottles. And so we would get 25 cents each and go in there and buy them. And that was the big thing. I remember one time we were in there and of course some old person comes in and she goes, what are you kids doing in here? Get out of here. This isn't for children. That's like, Jesus fucking Christ. I remember at one point I was like, why does she even bring us? We're so in the way.
When I take my kids places that it's going to be a long trip, I stuff their backpacks with activities because I'm like, the last thing I want them to do is be bored. And so I will come up with anything. But I mean, Mom, she gives 0 fucks. She's like, go play with sticks or something, or
go kick a rock.
Go build something in the backyard. I don't know.
There's got to be something to do. Can I water your cactuses? No, you'll kill them.
No.
God.
Go stay away from the cactuses. Don't go over there. And don't go near her garden either. We'll just stand here in a circle, Mom, and stand and drink our lead-based bottle soda.
Great drink.
And stay away from the one fun thing, the dog.
Okay, so anyway, you've got this dog.
So we got the dog. I brought it at home, and I called Victor on the way home, and I said, I'm bringing home a visitor. I said, well, actually, at first was Ryan, he did not want me to bring the dog home. Like, he absolutely did not want me to bring the dog home. I don't know. But he insisted that we did not leave the neighborhood because he's just like, someone's going to be looking for him. Mom, we can't leave. And I'm just like, okay. So we drove around for a half an hour. I'm like, Ryan, I don't know where else to go. I'm like, there are no garage door opens. There's no side gates to open. I'm like, it's getting dark.
Yeah.
I'm like, we've talked to every dog walker that we've seen, every person picking a weed or whatever.
Have you seen this dog?
I'm like, we've frightened every person in their front yard, be like, excuse me, and they're just like, what? Because, someone's got their back to the street and they're hosing something off, and all of a sudden the car pulls up, excuse me, they're like, what?
Oh my God. Yeah.
You can't do that anymore.
You really
it scares the shit out of people.
It really does.
And then I'm holding up this little, like brown turd. I'm like, do you know this dog? And they're like, no. I'm sorry. I've never seen that dog before. I'm like, all right, thanks.
Oh God, it's embarrassing.
I finally told him, I'm like, right. We have to go home. I'm like, we will have much more activity if we post it on all the places,
sure.
Instead of us driving around to random people asking them if they know this dog
at sundown.
Right. And so I posted it all over Facebook. So, and of course, as soon as you post it, they're like, oh, that's so sweet of you. You're such a good person.
No, I'm not really.
And I'm just like, just stop. I'm like, if you don't know it, then just shut up.
I know. Everyone's required to respond to everything.
Because I kept getting notifications. I'm like, oh, maybe it's, the parent or something like that. They're just like, God bless you for I'm like, oh God. I'm like, just, if you don't know it, then stop. I'm like, no one's going to bless me for this. Trust me. So I brought it home, and Olivia's like,
of course.
She's just like, she was obsessed. And the dog was super cuddly.
Someone's lap dog.
Well, you could tell that, it was just spent all its days on a lap or something.
Sure.
And so she gave it food and she gave it water, and she insisted that it stay in her bed. And so 10 minutes later, she came out and she's just like, Princess, come on, Princess.
Oh, God.
And I'm like, Princess.
She named it.
She already named it. And she's like, I gave Princess some food and some water, which she had both.
Oh,
and she's been playing on my bed, and I put a blanket and a pillow for her. And I'm just like, oh, geez.
Here we go.
By that night, I hadn't heard anything. So I'm like, well, I guess she's going to, just spend the night. And Olivia was like, she was so excited. And then I checked my email at like around midnight, and then I had gotten an email around 10:15, and they said, this is our dog. And they sent a picture, and they're just like, please contact us right away. We miss her. And so I'm like, oh shit. And I'm just like, I didn't even know that someone had responded.
Great.
So I replied, and I'm just like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, I didn't see your email. I said, I would have met you, because to me, 10's not that bad.
No, not at all.
And where they lived was exactly where she had been.
Okay.
I said, I'm sorry. I said, I didn't see this email until just now. I said, she's sleeping with my daughter. She's had food. She's had water. She's on a comfy blanket, and, my daughter's taking good care of her. I said, but I will contact you first thing in the morning, and, we can meet right away. So we met the next morning at like 8:30, I think. Mm-hmm. I went to go get her from Olivia, and Olivia's eyes opened. They look like little slits. And I'm just like, what's wrong? And she's just like, I'm like, well, I have to take the dogs back to their owner. I'm like, they contacted us. And she's like, okay. And I'm like, are you all right? And she's just like, yes. She's like, Princess stayed up all night and she kept licking my face. So I'm like, oh, okay. And then I'm like, well, I'm going to take her now. I'm like, you want to say goodbye? She's like, bye.
Oh, so she was over it.
She's like me. If she doesn't get sleep, nothing else matters.
Yeah, she's like, I don't care anymore. I'm sleeping.
She's like, yeah, you're cute, everything, but go. I'm tired.
Goodbye.
So
nice meeting you.
I met them at a bank, like right where in between both of our houses. And when they pulled up, it was a little Indian couple. They were older.
Aww.
And the woman had her window down, and the dog was just like, it got all shaky. And
she
so
knew.
it like practically jumped in the window. And they're like, chocolate. Her name was Chocolate.
Oh, that's so cute.
And she's like, your brother has been crying all night. He missed you so much.
Oh God.
Because they have another little white chihuahua that.
Oh my goodness! Of course, they come in pairs.
Yes,
everyone knows.
And then I guess their son, worked until midnight, and then when he got home and found out that the dog was missing, he walked the neighborhood until almost 4 a.m. looking for her. And then he's like, I told my son that she was probably with his other family, but he didn't believe it, so he wanted to keep looking for her. So I'm like,
good son.
But they said the reason why they don't live over there, actually. They had moved, but they had rented a house for years and years and years over there. And so when she gets out, because she's gotten out before, she tries to go back over to the old house for some reason.
Weird.
That's why he says she was literally at, the cross street. He's like, that's where our house was. I'm like, that's exactly where I found her.
They got to keep an eye on that thing.
Well, I think what it sounded like is if she gets into the garage,
she escapes.
I think they keep the side door open or something. Then she can get out through to the fence and go underneath. I mean, she was literally she looked like a gummy worm with legs. She was so small. She was tiny. Of course, Pablo was having a damn near heart attack.
Did he think it was a gift for him?
Well, they both did. Although Bo had one sniff and he was good. Pablo just every 10 seconds. I'm like, Pablo, it smells the same. Leave her butthole alone.
Oh, yeah. He's like, you're one of me.
Well, the thing with Pablo, what's weird is even though Pablo's fixed, he can still do it. And so
maybe he has one testicle still.
Yeah, maybe one of his descended.
Jesus.
And,
who knows?
Anyway,
all right. So you're a hero. Not all heroes wear capes. Sometimes they wear nightgowns. And
hey, I put on real clothes.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Thank you. Anyway, well, I'm glad that Chocolate found her way back to her little family.
Yes.
That's cute. Yes. Hilarious that Olivia's clearly ready for a pet. So
something, yeah.
Good to know. All right. So last week we talked about doing another edition of The Good, Bad, and Ugly. And we decided it would be first dates. So here is our segment, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, First Date Edition. Now we leave it really vague so that we can determine how we want to define a good, bad, or ugly. And ugly is UGLEE. And so we get to determine how we want to define first date. So I will allow you to go first, please, on your good first date. Oh, you haven't thought of anything?
No, I just...
All right, I'll go first.
Okay.
So I was thinking of it in two ways. One is, what would I want a good first date to be? Or what was the best first date I ever had?
That's what I was saying is just I don't know that I have an idea of what an ideal first date is, but I had a first date that turned out to be one of the better first. I don't know that I've had a fantastic first date though.
Okay.
Where I came home and I'm like, that was the best date ever. You know?
I have, and I will tell you the story because he was also my worst date. So which is very interesting. It was way before. I mean, I had Tyler because I had Tyler when I was 21. So this was obviously I was older, but I was single. And Stephanie and I had gone out for cocktails one night at the Hacienda, and we were having margaritas, and some guy was there with his friends, and he sent drinks over. And I was like, ew, because I don't like guys who do that. I don't know why. I'm just so weird.
It's cliche and douchey.
Yeah. And so when I look over and he waved over, okay, first of all, he had a major fro. And he was a white guy. And so
what's a pro?
A fro? Like a perm?
Oh, fro. I said he had a major pro. I'm like, what's a pro?
No, he had a fro.
Is that like a golf club?
No. And now here's the thing. He was Italian, but he didn't look Italian the way you... No, Paula, don't do it. He didn't look...
Hey, not all of them were the same.
He wasn't the kind of Italian that you would like. I'm just saying. He had a decent body, though. But anyway, so he wasn't my type, though. And so he sent him over, and he sent it over with his business card. And I was like, his name...
What was his business?
He was in healthcare.
Okay.
His name was Larry, and I was like, all right, I'm already turned off.
Oh, I know who this is.
I'm already turned off. So anyway, Stephanie...
Larry?
Stephanie is like,
thanks, Larry.
Stephanie's like, give me that card. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, Jamie.
What, did she start flicking it to see what kind of paper it was? And
No,
like,
but she's like,
smelled it.
She
This is
goes,
expensive.
he had his last name on his car. And so she goes, Jamie, she goes, that's his Ferrari downstairs. He's rich. And I'm like,
Oh, she had already seen it. God,
Oh, yeah.
What a little dirtbag she is.
and I said, I go, by all means, have at it. I'm not interested. And she's like, well, he wants to date you, though. And I'm like, giving zero fucks. Go for it. And he was just not interested because she's way younger. And so, I mean, not that much younger. But...
You guys are like polar opposites.
Yes.
Like Stephanie is like a noodle and you are, curvy.
It's like I'm
And
the Kim
plus Stephanie
Kardashian
always
and
has,
she's
like-
the Courtney.
Well, no, yes, the Courtney,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
with like stringy blonde hair and, and looks like she's on, cocaine all the time. She's wiry. You know what I mean?
She's a very wild woman. So anyway, I took the card and days pass. He finds out where I work and he calls and asked me to go out on a date. And I was single. And of course I'm like, well, I guess I could do it. I mean, what do I care? Fine. I hadn't dated anyone in months. And I was like, all right. So he picks me up at work and I said, I will go out with you, but during the day, lunch date only. And he's like, okay, no problem. So he picks me up because he was older than me, like a good decade older than me.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
Easily. And so he picks me up in his Ferrari at work and we go to one of the nicest restaurants at that time in Sacramento for a lunch date. And what's great about going to super fancy restaurants in Sacramento during the day is you get the same service and food, but it's not crowded and it's really pretty. So we listen to some really great country music on our way there. We have an amazing lunch, an amazing conversation. And I'm like, okay, maybe I can get over the hair. Like maybe I can, because I don't like guys with super curly hair, but he's so charming and he's really nice and he's not ugly. And so I'm like, all right. So then to top it all off, he lets me drive his Ferrari back to work. And it was a dream. I mean, to this day, it was one of my most favorite driving experiences of all time. I've never driven a Ferrari before in my life, and it was amazing. It was fast. It was everything you would expect it to be. So then, obviously...
You know what? That's like a thing. I'm guessing like that's the clincher for him. Huh?
Oh, for sure. It's a move, no doubt. But I fell for it completely because I wanted to drive it.
Like a charm every time.
Every time. So he drops me off at work. Everything is wonderful. No kiss, no nothing weird. He's like, it was so great. Maybe you'll go out with me again sometime for dinner. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. So I go in going, hey, I have never had, to this day, Paula, it's the best first date I've ever had. Best first date. I've never experienced one that went more smooth in every department. And it wasn't expected. I totally expected it to be a wreck, and it wasn't. And for me, it was impressive because I'm super like, just like men are dumb. And he wasn't. It was a really great date. So that was my best first date ever.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a really good one. I had a very good first date. Like everything probably a girl could possibly want.
Yeah.
But it went absolutely nowhere.
That's okay.
Because I don't know why. I had been at a bar with Stephanie and Jerry, and there was a wedding party that came in after a little while. But it was at this tiny little bar downtown called Maryland's that I used to love.
Oh,
They've
I love
changed locations,
Maryland's.
though.
Yeah.
And so I was actually sitting on a bar stool and I was remarkably texting someone on an old Nokia phone. And this guy, like, he either came up to me or was next to me. But he came to me and he's like, would you like to dance? And I'm just like, yeah, sure. And so we started dancing. And then after that, I'm like, well, thank you. And he had like a tux on because he was with the wedding party.
Oh.
And then he's like, well, do you want to dance again? I'm like, sure. And so anyways, we all left. And then that group was leaving at the same time. And he's just like, do you care? He's like, I live in San Jose, but I come up here pretty often. He's like, could I get your number and take you out sometime? And I'm like, yeah. And he was kind of cute. And so he called me like the next week and he wanted to go out the following weekend. And so he texted me or called me or sent me an email. I can't remember. And said, well, why don't we meet here because I said, you know what? I'm like, there's an art and wine festival going on in downtown Sacramento. I'm like, why don't we meet there? We'll walk around or whatever. Then we can, figure out if somewhere else we want to go. And so we did that. And, he was talking to people like, he wanted to look at art or whatever. And I'm just like, yeah, okay, whatever. I don't know anything about art. But it was just something to do and something to, chit chat about, etc. And then after that, he's like, well, I did make dinner reservations for us. And I'm like, oh, okay. And he's just like, I didn't know what kind of food you liked. He's all, but I think this place serves everything. Well, it was at the Esquire Grill.
Oh, nice.
And so Sacramento at the time didn't have a ton of nice restaurants.
Right.
So it was one of like the hipper, newer ones. And so we went to the Esquire Grill. He ordered us wine. He got, steak tartare for an appetizer. And we both got like fish or steak or something like that. We shared a dessert. And then after that, we went to Harlow's and we saw like this R&B band that plays all sorts of like, music like Al Green and Prince and so we were like dancing our asses off and we just had like this super great time. And then when we left around 2 a.m. or something, so we hugged and said goodbye and I felt absolutely nothing for him. And I think the feeling was mutual.
Oh, really?
Because I sent him an email on Monday. I'm like, hey, thanks for, Saturday. I'm like, I had a super great time and, blah, blah, blah. He's like, yeah, me too. And then we never talked again.
That's awesome. No sexual chemistry, but it was a great first date.
But I mean, isn't that like an ideal date for a girl?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Someone who goes out of the way to plan all this fantastic stuff and, I don't know. I think that's like what most girls want.
Do guys do that now? Do they plan dates?
Some do, yeah.
I guess they probably still do. It just seems like it's a time where it's not like that. I mean, maybe it is. I mean, but people, I guess apparently everyone meets online now. So you do these weird meetups instead of meeting someone somewhere and going, hey, you want to go out sometime? I mean, I don't know. Does that even happen anymore? I don't even know because I'm old and married. So I have no idea if that's the way it goes. I'm sure somebody's probably sitting there going, no, that's not how it goes. Anyway. All right. Good dates. Okay. Bad dates. Do you have a bad date?
I have plenty of bad dates.
Well, give me an example of a really bad date.
Well, I have two, but probably one of the worst was I had been talking to this guy. I don't know if we met online or how we met, to be perfectly honest. I'm not sure how we met. He supposedly was a widower from like 3 years ago.
Interesting.
We had talked on the phone for like 2 weeks and then we agreed to meet for dinner. We got to dinner and we were chit-chatting and then we decided to go for coffee afterwards. Well, I was in the middle of getting a divorce. Like, right. In California, when you divorce, you have to wait 6 months.
Right.
So it's not that you're not divorced. It's just a matter of waiting.
Yeah.
Because that's just how long it takes before everything gets processed. So I was in that 6-month window where I was just waiting for it to be stamped. So we went to coffee after dinner and we were chit-chatting. And somehow I said something about when my divorce is final. And he's like, wait, what? And I'm like, when my divorce is final? He's like, you're still married? And I'm like, well, I guess legally. I said, but I mean, I filed all the paperwork months ago. I said, I'm just waiting for the waiting period to be done. I said, there's nothing I can do right now. He's like, you mean my first day back out is with a married woman? And he said it really loud.
Oh my God.
And I was mortified. And so I went to the bathroom.
I would have left.
I remember going in there and I set my purse down because we came in separate cars.
Oh, thank God.
Because we didn't know like at what point we were going to split up or part ways. And so I came back to the table and he's like, I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have reacted that way. He's like, I get it. It's done. It's over with. He's like, you're not married. He's just like, it just surprised me was all. And I'm just like, well, I don't know what surprises you. These things take time.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm not like spotless or whatever. So
God. Well,
he's like, I said, but I think I'm going to go home. And he's like, no, don't go home.
Oh my God. Did you stay or did you leave?
We went somewhere else. And
you stayed?
And I was not feeling it after that. I'm like, I just really want to go back. And so he took me back to where my car was. And I got out and he's like, all right. He's like, well, I'll call you later. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Okay, bye. And I got to my car and I couldn't find my keys. And
Did he take them?
No. And I'm like, where the fuck are my keys? And then I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, when I set my purse down in the bathroom at Starbucks, I'm like, I had my keys out. I had left them on top of the toilet paper dispenser.
Oh, no.
So, you know what? We did take the same car to Starbucks. So my car was back at the restaurant where we met.
Thank goodness.
So, but the problem was, it was like 10:30. Starbucks had already closed.
What did you do?
I was stuck at the restaurant with no keys to my car. And it was like winter and I was just wearing a light sweater and I was freezing my ass off. And so I had to call Victor.
No!
I said, he still had a key to the house. I'm like, can you go to the house and get my spare car key, drive to Folsom and bring it to me? And then that way I can drive to Starbucks and get my other keys. And he's like, sure. And he knew exactly why. The next day I went to work. And at lunchtime, I drove all the way to Starbucks and said, did anybody leave a pair of keys here? And she's like, yeah, they're right here. So I got the keys and I'm like, oh my God, that was the worst experience of my lifetime.
Literally the worst date ever. Okay, my bad date was Larry. So I did agree to go out on another date with him, and it was dinner. And it did not end super well, but it didn't end so poorly that I wasn't willing to do a third date because he asked me to go skiing as our third date. And I went, oh my God, I love it. Yes, absolutely. I've been skiing in years. I would love to go. So he's like, all right, well, I'm going up with some friends. We're at Squaw Valley. Just, I could not go, with them because I had work and a child and everything. And you actually came over to watch Tyler for me. I was going to go up and spend the night and then come back the next day. And so I head up to Squaw Valley, super excited. It's like 7 a.m. and I get there and I knock on the door and a woman answers. And a little boy. And I was like, hi. And I said, I'm looking for Larry. And she's like, 1 second. And then she comes back. She goes, he's upstairs. And I said, oh, I thought he was going to be skiing. And so she goes, no, he's upstairs. So I knock on the door and I open it up. And there he is in bed, completely hungover. There was Coke on the bathroom counter. There was booze bottles everywhere. And he was in bed, completely out of it. And there was a woman on the phone downstairs, which I didn't know. I had no idea what was going on. I was completely oblivious. And he tries to fuck me. And I'm like, no, this is not happening. I thought we were going skiing. That's why I'm here. And he's like, no, we'll go, but not right now. So nothing ever happened. Oh, well, he jacked off. I did not. And I was like, this is like the worst. I can't believe I'm even
what
here.
am I even doing here?
Yeah, this was terrible. And so I get up and I'm like, I don't know what this is, but this is not what I expected. And he's like, I know, I'm really sorry. And so I'm like, I'm going to go. And he goes, hold on. So I'm getting ready to leave. And the woman comes up and she goes, Larry, get your things. You're leaving. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, what did I walk into? So he was married, which I didn't know. And so
was that his wife?
No, it was his wife's best friend. And so they had gone up and his wife wasn't going to go for whatever reason. So he went up with them. And then he had the audacity to invite me to this family cabin. And so she's like, get out. And she's like, Linda's waiting for you or whatever. I can't remember. So he begged me to drive him home. And I said, I absolutely will not drive you back. And he said, please. He's like, they're not going to take me home. And I'm in the middle of nowhere. And I'm just like, where's your Ferrari? And
yeah,
he's
really. I'm like, you made your bed. You need to lie in it.
He goes, it doesn't work up in Tahoe. And I was like, oh my God, this thing is falling apart. I said, I will take you as far as like Highway 49. I told him I would take him to a certain point. I said, but I'm not going out of my way to take you anywhere. So he's like, fine. He cried the whole way home.
Oh my God.
The whole way home. And he was hungover. And I don't know what it is, but I get really vicious. I made sure I took all the back roads. He threw up. I mean, I just made it as hell as possible.
Kidding me? As soon as he started crying, I would have pulled over. I'd be like, get out.
Oh God, it was brutal. So I dropped him off somewhere in Auburn. And I said, find the rest of your way home. I'm out. And I literally dropped him off at a restaurant and I left. And never heard from him again. Although he did have the audacity to call me a couple of years later in the middle of the night looking for sex. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. I'm like, goodbye. In fact, when he called, he's like, hi, guess who it is? I'm like, Todd? no. James? No. Alan? No. I'm like, who is this? And he goes, it's Larry. I'm like, oh my God, you have some nerve. Goodbye.
Like, Larry who?
God, it was hilarious. I'm like, no. So that was my worst date ever. Bad date. Really bad date. Oh, it was the worst. Brutal. Okay, and Ugly.
Okay, so this actually was kind of a spur of the moment thing, and I'm not a big wine person as we discussed.
Yes.
But it turned out to be one of the more romantic dates I've ever had. I was going to see this guy that I had been dating for barely a week, but we had already gone out 3 times. I got to his house kind of late. It was 5 o'clock in the evening and on a Sunday. Mm-hmm. And so we both had to work the next day. And I'm just like, hey, sorry, I'm so late. I got tied up today with something. And he's like, that's okay. And so I'm like, what'd you want to do? And he's just like, let's drive to Napa. And I'm like, Napa? I'm like, it's late. I'm
yeah.
like, everything's going to be closed. And he's like, so what? Let's do it. And so I'm like, all right. So we just drove there. We talked and, listened to music, all that kind of stuff. And we found the one winery that was still open. And it was a beautiful winery. And we did a tasting. And I went to the bathroom. When I came back out, he was standing in the little quad area. And he had a bottle and he had 2 little glasses in his hand. He's like, come on, let's go sit by that pond. And so they had these tables by this pond and there was ducks and stuff. And so we sat there and he opened the bottle and poured 2 glasses and we just sat there and talked and, drank the bottle or whatever. And then we went for a drive and found this little restaurant, little hole in the wall restaurant and, ate there. And then we drove back. And it was just so fun because it was
that was
just
your ugly date.
I loved it.
Yeah.
It was so nice. It was just so
cool.
Spontaneous and not stuffy or it worked out perfect. I thought. So.
I have an ugly date too, and this is actually with Daryl because I thought it's not fair to leave him out of this segment. So ugly can go one of 2 ways. But I decided to take it the positive route like you did. One time, Daryl, I love going driving, just driving anywhere for however long. I don't care where we end up. I just love driving my car. So we went for a drive and we ended up in the town of, I think it was Jackson, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's a really old town, an old mining town. And there's tons of old thrift stores and bookstores and stuff. So we ended up just going in there. And they were having some kind of veterans parade for the sake of having, it was not a holiday. They just decided to have a veteran parade for some of the veterans. Maybe they had returned or something. So we couldn't park down there where all the old stores were. So we parked somewhere on the side and we walked through this really old part of Jackson and we found this bookstore. I could have spent hours, because I love old vintage books, and I could have spent hours there. Mm-hmm. So we went through there. I found books from the 1700s, 1800s, just these amazing books. And Daryl is so accommodating. He lets me do whatever I want when I get in that mode. He's like, let's do it, because apparently it's really unusual for him. He had not experienced a woman who's just like, let's do this. And just spontaneity was not something he was used to. And so he was thrilled with the whole day. So we finished that. We got some food, and we literally, by the time we got home, and every time we have those types of ugly adventures, we walk in the door or we pull in, and it's just like that time in Grease 2 when their motorcycle ride is over and she's back at the gas station and she's like, shoot, it's over. I'm so pissed. It was so fun. I never want it to end. That's exactly what it was like. It was so great. And I mean, it didn't take a bunch of time or money. It was just one of these cool, spontaneous things. But those are definitely ugly dates, no doubt. And that's kind of sounds like what you did too. So we both have the same spontaneity is the ugly date, I think, is kind of the term. All right. Anyway, we are running out of time. So we will pick up and we will talk about everything on the next show.
Yeah. No ugly and awkward moments.
No. Not when we're doing the good, bad, and ugly. It's way too much.
So thanks, everybody, for joining us. Hope you have a good week. Keep your masks on and stay safe. Don't
keep your mouth closed.
And enjoy summertime. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening and sharing the show. See you next time on The Ugly Truth.